Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and today we are going to be diving in to more Druhkari content. It's been a little bit. I've been pretty busy over the last week, but I finally got the chance to do one of the videos I wanted to do, which is, of course, talk about the Hellions, perhaps one of the best combat units, or best, honestly, overall units in the entire Druhkari Codex. So, by now, most of you probably know that the Druhkari Codex is pretty much fully public. Everybody can view it. Everybody can see it. It's, circulating throughout pretty much every Discord, and it's pretty epic. It's one of the best codexes, in my honest opinion, of 10th edition. But not necessarily because it's super overpowered. I actually think that it is pretty balanced overall. But my God, the fun factor of this codex is through the roof, and I do think it is strong as well. So it's just like the Eldar codex. Fun, but also strong. So I'm really enjoying it. I've played several games with the Druhkari and the new codex so far, and I plan to play more in the near future. I've played almost all the detachments, and I've either played them or played against them. So the only detachment I haven't really dived into is the homunculus covens, the Covenite coterie, or whatever. But I've played all the other ones, and I think Hellions are honestly one of the most solid units in the entire setup. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at the datasheet of the Hellions, the new one from the Codex, the stats, weapons, and special rules, of course. We're going to be also diving into the strengths and weaknesses of the Hellions, the combos and synergies that they can be a part of, and how to deploy and use them on the tabletop, which I will show on Tabletop Simulator. All right, so this is their datasheet from the Codex. I've put the points here for you. It is 5 points. It is 5 for 95 points, and it is 10 for 190. A little bit expensive, but check this out. The cost is pretty much justified because of all the damage they can do. So starting at their stats, their movement 14, toughness 4 with a 4-up save, 6-up invul, 2 wounds, leadership 7, OC 1. They're basically fast Space Marine scouts. They have the durability of scouts. I would actually say that they're a little bit more durable because they have that 6-up invul. And yeah, they're looking pretty strong. I believe they were pretty similar last edition, or, in the index. I think they probably had a 5-up save maybe. But anyway, I could be wrong on that. But they're still really solid unit. And just the stat line alone can show us that they can take some punishment. As far as their ranged weapons go, they have splinter pods. The Hellions can take a splinter pistol and another weapon, but it's usually not worth it. The splinter pods are kind of good enough. Anti-infantry 3+, assault, and twin-linked. It's not going to kill a lot of stuff, but, big squad of 10 might kill 3 Marines, 2 Marines, if you're lucky. The problem is it's AP0. So that's the issue with the splinter pods. However, their melee is really why you take them. They have the Hellglaive. Now, the Hellglaive got a big glow up. Basically, they gave it Lance. So not only does it still have sustained hits 1, but it has Lance now. Now, its base stats are attacks 3, weapon skill 3, strength 4, AP -1, damage 2. But there's a lot of ways to buff this that we'll go over later in the video. And I know this seems like a pretty humble profile, but having damage 2 base on a weapon is already really good. And then the ability to up that even further is insane. So having Lance allows you to wound regular Space Marine infantry on 3s. However, it's very easy to get up to 2s even with just their datasheet. So there are a couple of other melee options, but they kind of suck. A power weapon and a stun claw. They still have Lance. The stun claw has dev wounds and precision, and the power weapon is anti-infantry and sustained. But they both have damage 1. The AP is slightly higher on the power weapon, and the attacks are slightly higher on both of the weapons than the Hellglaive. But generally speaking, it's not really worth it because you're losing out on a strength. and you're losing out on a damage. Now, the Heliarch can also be equipped with the Phantasm Grenade Launcher that gives it smoke and grenades. So the unit can throw a grenade as well, if the unit wasn't awesome enough already, and pop smoke, which you may not think is that good, but it's actually superb on this unit because it's already a tough cookie to deal with. So throwing smoke on a unit that's already decently tough for Dark Eldar is really kind of insane. So there is that. The Dark Eldar CP economy isn't like super great, but if you're running a big unit of these guys, it's a big investment. So you want to give your opponent as much trouble as you can once you dive into something and destroy it utterly. You want to make sure that your opponent has to sink a lot of resources into the unit. Now, as for their abilities, they have Deep Strike as a core ability. This is actually perfect because it allows them to rapid ingress effectively. Rapid ingress, of course, is one of the more skilled stratagems to use in the core rulebook. It takes a little bit of knowledge of the game and timing, but rapid ingress can absolutely win you games, and most opponents don't really consider it all too much, even if you remind them multiple times. So it's one of those things that it's known at the tournament level. If you're playing a highly competitive game, people will be aware of it and could potentially stop it from coming into a really good spot on the battlefield. But are most players able to stop it? Not really. And sometimes it's more trouble than it's worth to stop it. Now, they also have, well, let me just say this as well. Having them in reserve a lot of the times is actually a better call than having them on the battlefield. The reason being, they're kind of a big unit. They're on 32 mil bases on flying stands, so they kind of take up a lot of space. So having them in rapid ingress, where you're going to engage them later, is fine because they don't really want to engage turn one anyway. They're more of a follow-up unit after your other units are already kind of slung into the enemy. Hellions kind of follow up and crush whatever's left. And by then, hopefully there's a lot less tools on the battlefield that your opponent has to deal with them. Now, their pain ability is in the fight phase. When you select the unit to fight, you can spend 1 pain token to empower the unit. And while empowered, add 1 to the attack and strength characteristics of this unit's melee weapons. So, basically, they are going to be strength 5 and 4 attacks. A squad of 10 will have 40 attacks at strength 5, AP -1, damage 2, sustained hits, and lance. They're wounding Space Marines on 2s, they're wounding Terminators on 3s, and they're wounding a lot of vehicles in the game on 4s. Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived. We have arrived. This unit is probably one of the most effective units in the Druhkari Codex for general damage against a lot of different enemy types. Oh, you're fighting against Death Guard, which are notoriously good against combat units. There's a huge squad of Plague Marines on the other side of the battlefield. Will throwing a squad of 10 of these into them work? Yes. Because they have Lance, so at worst, they're wounding on 4s, right? Even if your strength is lowered, you're still wounding on 4s. You're going to hit on 4s, but that's okay because you have sustained hits 1. So at the very least, even against Death Guard units, you're able to retain your base stats in a certain way. I know sustained hits isn't technically +1 to hit, but it's kind of like +1 to hit, right? So that's really good. Plus, the synergies that they can be part of are just amazing. So obviously, if you hit a Death Guard unit, you're going to want to have those synergies available so that you can wipe them out. Next, we have their actual ability, which is Skyboard Evasion. And this is basically a ranger move. If an enemy unit moves within 9 inches of them, they get to make a d6 move. This is phenomenal for keeping them safe, but not only that, it's really good at being aggressive, right? These guys can be more aggressive if your opponent messes up. So One of the things I really like about this unit, it's kind of more of a niche thing, but if your opponent has a 6-inch deep strike, decides to do a 6-inch deep strike, and the only place to, kind of come in is at the corner of a ruin footprint. And your opponent can't quite, fully get over there. So basically you put your unit on the ruin footprint, hidden behind the wall, but now this D6 move can allow you to kind of get out of that position. And it can allow you to move on the other side of the wall. It can allow you to move on the other side of the footprint, on the other, end of it, or you can simply move closer to the opponent, right? So that's another thing. In Spectacle of Spite, so that's the Witch detachment, there's a stratagem for 2 CP that allows you to charge an enemy unit if they end their move within 9 inches of you at the end of the movement phase. Well, a 9-inch charge kind of sucks to make, right? It is a long shot. But if you make it, it's one of those game-changing things. Hellions are even better at this, because if an enemy unit ends within 9, let's say they're within 7 inches, that's a pretty long charge still. You might miss it. You have to spend command points to reroll, and Dark Eldar don't have the best pain token or, command point economy. So you roll d6, and you basically can add that to your charge, because you're going to move up, and then you're going to have less of, a ways to go to charge it. And that's scary. That's really scary. And again, there's ways to play around this for a good opponent. But the mere fact of the matter is, you also get to choose how you interact with that opponent. Because it's not d6 straight towards them. It's d6 in any direction. So you can turn something like a, 7-inch charge into potentially like a 3 or 4-inch charge. And also, your opponent might try to put walls in between the Hellions and their unit. This D6 movement helps with that too, because it helps you possibly get around that. So remember, you kind of only need one model to be around it to be able to actually successfully charge. And then once you successfully charge in with everything, you can, of course, pile in and then, go from there. It's not perfect, but it'll allow you to at least tie up that enemy unit until their fight phase, when you can actually do stuff. And weirdly enough, if you are successfully able to make that charge, your opponent can't shoot you. They can't fall back anymore. It's not the movement phase. So it's not like your opponent can just fall back in the shooting phase and be all good. Okay, that's basically it. Now, the last thing is, the unit can still be taken in squads of 10. So this is something they left in the Codex, guys. Hellions can be taken in massive units. Which, between you and me, I thought they might have gotten rid of. And I wasn't going to be mad at it, but now that it's, we can still take them in squads of 10, that's awesome. Okay, let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses of this unit. So the strengths are, they hit very hard in combat. There's no doubt about that. They're one of the best general combat units in the entire decks. The reactive move is very powerful for both avoiding damage and getting closer to opponents. And because of the nature of Hellions being a combat unit, sometimes moving towards the opponent is the optimal choice. Also, for a Dark Eldar unit, again, Dark Eldar is the squishiest faction in the game, they're relatively durable, having 2 wounds, toughness 4, and a 4+ save, plus the ability to pop smoke. Their weaknesses, however, are that they are hard to maneuver around ruined walls, and being bigger models makes it hard to hide them. So this is the weakness of pretty much all mounted units, aside from, things that are kind of on smaller bases and or can move through walls. Like Shining Spears can move through walls, so some of that is kind of mitigated. But these guys, they don't get that option. So they do have movement 14, but they just kind of have to stick with what they got. And here's the other thing, they have a low base AP value on their weapons, and there really isn't a good way to give them extra AP. So it's not like other units like Hellions are AP -2 base, and they can also benefit from some other stuff. These guys are just AP -1, and there's really no way around it, right? Spectacle of Spite, the only, stratagem that gives AP -1, it's only to witches. It's only to witch units. So, not witch cult units. So, unfortunately, this is a witch cult unit, by the way. I forgot to mention that in the datasheet, but a witch cult unit can benefit from all the stratagems. It's just they're not going to get the extra AP. So that's a shame. So against really high armor units, like Terminators, these guys can punch pretty hard, but they can't punch decisively enough to where you can guarantee a lot of the times that they're going to go down. However, I will say weight of dice. Weight of dice is always a thing that does matter. So, if there's a good charge set up and you got, 5 Thunderhammer Stormshield Terminators on the other end of that, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I should engage, just engage them, Don't be a pussy about it. Just go in there, charge in. If they roll a bunch of 3-up saves and, they don't fail any, that's Warhammer. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong in comments, but I think 10 Hellions with stratagem support can very easily take out 5 Thunderhammer Stormshield Termies. All right, so let's talk about some combos and synergies. Now, the Spectacle of Spite is obviously their best attachment. They are a witch cult unit, so that gives them combat drugs, which are actually pretty good. I was very pleasantly surprised that combat drugs actually came back in a good way and not a way that was stupid. So basically, you get a choice of combat drug on a table. You can choose one, pick one, or randomly roll for 2. If you randomly roll for 2, you can get the benefits of a drug that you've already gotten previously in the battle, that you've already picked previously. However, if you pick them, you can only pick once. The good news is you don't have to select one for the entire game. You can pick and choose how you want. If you want to roll randomly, you can. If you want to just have one, you can, right? So that is pretty awesome. And here are the benefits here listed out. You can get +2 move, +1 toughness, +1 attack, +1 leadership and ballistic skill, +1 weapon skill, or +1 strength. Now, the other cool thing about this is that Hellions are actually pretty tough. So unlike witches, where you're boosting them from toughness 3 to toughness 4, not a huge deal. With Hellions, you're boosting them from toughness 4 to toughness 5, which is actually a huge deal because it prevents certain opponents from being able to just absolutely smash them with anti-infantry type weapons. Not anti-infantry specifically, but things like bolters, pulse rifles, things like that. They can survive a little bit better against those types of weapons. Especially stuff that's strength 5. So things that start to be really effective against Hellions, like heavy bolters and the like, all of a sudden, they're wounding 50% of the time. So they're not doing as well. So there's that. Combat drugs are very good. And then there's a slew of great stratagems in Spectacle of Spite, like Fight on Death. Insanely good. So if your opponent decides not to shoot at you and decides that they want to charge you, they're a combat army, then you can just fight on death. And guess what? Even though you can't empower yourself when you fight on death, you have enough models that they've probably killed to where it's pretty powerful, right? It's pretty damn powerful. Now, they can also be given lethal hits with one of their stratagems, which boosts their damage considerably against tough targets. So I mentioned earlier that they can swing into, kind of most vehicles pretty well. And by most vehicles, I mean anything toughness 9 or lower. If it's toughness 10 or above, they still struggle. But with Lance, when they charge in, they do a little bit better. So they can do some really, really good damage with lethal hits. And the ability to charge a unit at the end of their movement phase, like I spoke about before, is just absolute creme de la creme. I mean, this will win you games. This will put your opponent in a position, if they're a good player, it'll put them in a position where they have to play around it significantly. If they're not a great player, if they're just your average Joe, which is fine, then it'll win you the game in certain circumstances. 100%, right? These guys have a low OC value, but if you're running in a unit of 10, if your opponent moves on to an objective, for an example, and you just charge them, you could easily recapture that objective and ensure that your opponent's not going to be able to really do anything about it unless they charge the Hellions. So again, they have to be playing around it. They have to be setting up for that inevitability. Now, this is not the only detachment they're good in. They're also good in Real Space Raiders. Real Space Raiders can give them -1 to hit, +1 to hit and wound versus units below half strength, lethal hits, or auto advance 6. So pretty good stratagems here as well. The -1 to hit is only good in close combat because they do have smoke, remember, so they can just always get -1 to hit in the shooting phase. But of course, -1 to hit in combat's also good because you never know when you're going to need that. You know, there's a lot of units in the game who have a ton of attacks or are really good against things with lowish armor, like Arcoflagellants or whatever they're called from the Sisters of Battle. Sisters of Battle, by the way, guys, they're on the up and up. They've gotten buffed. They're looking like they're being played more as well. So we could be in for a tough time against them. But +1 toughness with combat drugs or -1 to hit in close combat isn't a bad way of kind of semi-dealing with those units. So yeah, combos and synergies absolutely peak in these two detachments. Having said that, in other detachments that target Druhkari units, they can also be okay, right? Because if you only have one squad of 10 of these guys, there is lethal hits in almost every detachment, right? I believe Kabbalite Cartel has something along those lines where it just targets Druhkari. Again, I could be wrong, but you know, I think most of the detachments have something. And I know for a fact in Reaper's Wager, these guys are getting rerolls and possibly lethal hits as well. So yeah, they were good in Reaper's Wager before, and now they're even better in Reaper's Wager because they're just so much more powerful. I still think Spectacle Spite is the way to go with these guys, at least if you're going to run a bunch of them. But Reaper's Wager, a solid squad of 10 of these guys charging into something, is a sight to behold as well, because rerolls are always awesome when you're getting multiple critical effects. Okay, so next thing I want to do is show you guys how these work on Tabletop Simulator. Just run you through some examples of what kind of carnage they can absolutely deal to enemy units and how you should position them on the battlefield. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into Tabletop, and I'll see you guys in just a second. Alrighty guys, welcome to our Tabletop Simulator example where we will be going over some basic tenets of playing with the Hellions. So, let's say that we have an opponent set up. Maybe it's Blood Angels, maybe it's Ultramarines, maybe it's something else. But every time you're playing Hellions, you want to make sure that you deploy them in a place that is both safe and has a lot of impact. And I'll also say this, it's not a bad idea to rapid ingress them in a lot of detachments, at least one unit of them. So we have our 10 Hellions here. Now, the first example I want to show you is just simply the raw damage output that these guys can get and what it actually looks like in a battle. Because, I mean, we can sit here and say numbers, you know, I can go on, you know, a depth roll or something like that, and I can kind of just like plug in the numbers and it's, oh, it kills this many Marines on average. But I don't think you truly understand until you see it. So let's go ahead and do that. So first of all, I really like Terrain Layout 6 for Hellions because it allows them to kind of be a little bit more flexible in where they deploy. They could deploy over here, they could deploy over here, and both of these areas are pretty safe for Hellions. So I've put them here this time around because this is our expansion objective, and depending on where your opponent sets up their stuff, they might set up over here on the side. So we have Assault Intercessors with jump packs, big old unit here, you know, big old Death Star of them. I probably have a character in there as well, very expensive unit. So we need to take them out, at least we need to take out enough of them so that we can auto-see them on the objective so that they don't get the points next turn. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to simply move them up as far as we can. All right, move them up just up to here. Again, you have to be careful with some stuff. Maybe they have an Overwatch threat nearby. Just be aware of that kind of stuff. But we move up our Hellions kind of like this. Kind of making them move as much as possible. They do move 14 inches, so don't worry about, you know, getting up there. And again, we could just fly over this little ruin wall here. All right, so we get our whole unit over here. Now, one of the keys is we have to make sure that we're as close as possible without actually getting an engagement so that we can have an easy charge. So we move our guys forward. God, and they look so cool. I mean, I know Tabletop Simulator is kind of cursed, but the Hellions actually came out looking fresh. Whoever did these Hellions, great job, because they look awesome. Love Hellions. Yeah. All right, so we get to shoot first, right? So the first thing we're going to do is just shoot off a casual 20 shots with Twin Linked. We're hitting on 3s. And we are going to go ahead and wound on 3s because anti-infantry plus with Twin Linked. And we're re-rolling these. So again, you're not going to kill a ton with this, but a squad of 10, I mean, that's 15 saves that they have to make. That's 2 or 3 Marines that are going to die, right? So they roll their saves, and we get 5 wounds. That's pretty good. That's pretty good for, honestly, low-quality shooting. So they lose a couple right off the bat. Now, they're probably going to take from the front just so that you have less of a charge. But if you're like really close, your opponent might not care that much. So, you know, let's say they just take from the back here. They just take out 2 models and they put a wound on another one. Okay. Which honestly, for our purposes, doesn't matter. It's kind of like we didn't do a wound. So we kill a couple Marines there. Then we're going to charge in. We got our charge roll and we're going to get everyone in combat. So, you know, I figure we're at least going to be able to get most of these guys in combat. So we're going to go ahead and just, you know, maybe go 4 like this with this guy. And then just maybe we get a 6, you know. So we're right there. That's fine. A 6 will work because we can kind of just, again, we can go 3.3 and then we can go the rest of the distance here. Boink. We just kind of conga line them down like this. 1, 2, 3. Whoops. 4, 5, and 6 in front. There we go. That way we can make sure everybody gets... trying to fly off there and find Spider-Man. That way we can make sure everybody at least gets into base contact with somebody else when we pile in. Right? So we want to make sure all these guys can attack. So anyway, it looks like all of them can attack. We don't even really need to pile in with anybody. So we're going to stay right there. And, you know, we're going to do the rest of our turn or wherever, but when it comes around to it, we're going to go ahead and do our attack. So you get 40 attacks with a pain token, which is pretty crazy. Now, this is just with the pain token, nothing else. If you want to, you know, add in lethal hits, that's a good idea, right? So I would like to add lethal hits in here as a stratagem. So we're just going to say that we have lethal hits. Now, let's say that we're playing Spectacle of Spite, which is the Witch detachment. Now, personally, if you have the opportunity to, on something like Hellions, where you're double critting, you want more attacks. More attacks is generally going to be better for you anyway, because you're already wounding Marines on 2s. You don't need the extra strength against a unit of regular Marines. So we're just going to go with attacks on this one. So we're going to go 10 more attacks there, plus 1 per model. We're going to be at 50 attacks, guys. 50. Let's roll them so we don't get rerolls, but we're basically hitting on 3s and wounding on 2s because of Lance and Strength 5. So, lethals and sustained hits. Here we go. Ready? Boom. Now we're wounding on 2s. Quite a bit of 1s, actually, weirdly enough. 1, 2, 3. Well, maybe that's about average. So we're going to delete these. And our opponent is going to take this many saves. 38 saves at -1. Guys, I guarantee you, your opponent dies here, right? Even the character that he probably has with it. So at -1 armor, let's see what happens. Ladies and gentlemen, your opponent has lost 23 models. 23 Space Marines killed. Now, obviously, this is overkill, right? Obviously, this is major overkill. You could probably get away with running 5 Hellions into this setup and trade up. However, 10 Hellions is still pretty good because it's harder to kill than you think. They're scouts, remember. So, your opponent has to be in a really good spot to follow up and kill them. Also, if they move within 9 inches, you can, of course, move D6 back, which is why we are fighting around a ruin here. So, basically this happens. All right, goodbye. Any character that was with them, by the way, is also dead. It's just, there's so many saves they have to make. If they're running a character in there, it's gone, right? So then we, kind of consolidate back. And here's a really easy way to do it with Hellions. Just move back towards the center, just like this, right? Just move back towards the ruin. You can do it because you're, kind of on an expansion here. We're going to move over a little bit with everyone else that can, so that we're getting closer to the objective, but we're not actually breaking any consolidation rules here, right? If we're already off an objective, closer to is like a really easy thing to get. So we're just moving closer to the objective. Closer to the objective. Okay. He doesn't want to cooperate. That's fine. As long as I'm moving closer, it's okay. All right. So we're there, right? So now, yeah, your opponent can shoot us, but they have to move outside of here, really, to shoot us with anything substantial. And if we measure from here to here, it's basically 10 inches, right? We could even be a little cheeky, and we could put one model just a little bit farther out, right? A little bit farther out, so that if they do manage to get, past this and kind of deploy here to shoot us, we can move our D6. Or if we're in Spectacle of Spite, might be worth it to like put a model like right here. Just have a couple models like right here. Because if they move towards us, we could potentially charge them. So here's my other example that I want to show you guys, right? We killed the crap out of that unit. But what if something like a Ball Predator comes up, right? Has to be fully within the ruin to see out of it. So it's like right there, right? Ball Predator comes up. If we are in 9 inches, which we are now because we've positioned our guys correctly, we get a D6 move. So we're going to get our little D6 move here. Again, you could flub the roll, but that's Warhammer. We're going to roll a 4. Perfect. So we're just going to move our guys up 4 inches. Blink. Ball Predator cannot do anything about it. Can't overwatch us or anything because it's not the right phase. And now we're going to just charge. 4 inches. 4-inch charge. We get 1, 2. We make our charge. And now we're in the Ball Predator. So the unit that wanted to kill us is now unable to because it doesn't have, it can't really do anything. Now, what I will say is if you do charge something like this, they can shoot you in the shooting phase. But it is sometimes preferable to do something like this because it will protect you from other units shooting at them. So if they have a unit of intercessors over here drawing line of sight to you, it's going to protect you from that, right? So you're only getting shot with the Ball Predator now versus potentially getting shot with their entire army, which is, again, a benefit. But let's do the math as if we charged the Ball Predator separately. Because I want to show you guys kind of what happens when you go against a vehicle. A lot of people might think, oh, Hellions aren't going to be able to deal with this vehicle. Hellions aren't good against vehicles. Guys, they're pretty good against vehicles, okay? At least things that are, to the level of a Ball Pred. Ball Preds are toughness 10, so it's a little bit harder. But if we have +1 strength from another source, like for example, Spectacle's Spite, perhaps, +1 strength from a combat drug, then we can absolutely wreck this thing. Okay, so all of them are in there. And again, we're not getting 50 attacks this time. We're getting 40 because we chose +1 strength. But we're going to be at strength 6 with Lance. So we're going to be wounding on 4s, and we're going to throw lethal hits on there as well. So we're hitting on 3s. Horrible roll there, but that's okay. And we're going to get sustained and lethal hits here, right? Then we're going to roll again, 4s. This is still really strong. They're going to need to take 21 saves at 4 up. And guess what we did, guys? We just killed it. They took 20. They took 22 damage. Guys, that's pretty insane. By the way, strength 6 with lethals and sustained, with lance and everything like that, can take out a knight pretty much. I know it's only 22 damage right here, but that almost took it out. All we would need to do is fire a couple dark lances at it first, soften it up a little bit of haywire, a little bit of dark lance, and then we kill a knight with this squad. So when you guys say this squad can't kill vehicles, I laugh. I laugh, honestly. Now, in reality, if they shot the heavy flamers and the ball predator, the ball flame cannon at us, we would not be hitting as hard. But it's during their turn, so it's okay, right? During our turn, we'll just finish it off, we'll kill it, and then we'll go from there. The unit is still performing way above average, right? It's performing way better than before. I honestly think we're going to see some great things out of Hellions in the coming months. And I think Dark Eldar leaving off, 10th edition on a strong note is about time. It's about time these guys had their day in the sun. So, yeah, these these models are really strong, Incubi could not have done that. Hellions are probably one of the only units that can hit that hard because they can go up to strength 6 and they have lance. So, really cool unit. Now, another thing I want to show you guys really quick is there's a lot of talk in the meta about orcs. And orcs are going to retake the meta, and they're going to, horde orcs are going to just absolutely destroy. Well, guess what? Hellions are good against orcs too. So Incubi are a little bit less effective against things like orcs because they have strength 4 weapons. Strength 4 weapons are traditionally not good against toughness 5 models. Guess what? Hellions don't give a damn. Okay? They're like the honey badgers of the Dark Eldar. They don't care what they go up against. They're going to hit it hard. They're not as specialized as Incubi. So, we have a squad of 20 orcs, let's say. Now, let's go over to our Blood Angels over here. Let's just say we have a bunch of orcs. These are orcs, okay, guys? I don't have any orcs saved because I rarely go up against orcs. But anyway, this is a big squad of orc boys. Big squad of 20 boys. And, maybe they have multiple of these units throughout the battlefield. But, 20 boys on an objective is kind of insane, right? So they have their big boy squad right here. Let's say it's kind of like on their expansion a little bit. Right, they have a big old boy squad. And you have your Hellions set up here because you know that their boys aren't going to be able to hold their expansion, right? So turn 1, 14 inches, you move right on up there. They get first turn, they get on the objective. You need to take this out or you are going to probably lose a lot of primary, right? So you move your Hellions up, you charge you shoot them first of all. So what's good about this unit is, unlike units like Incubi, they have a shooting attack. So you got 20 shots. Again, we're hitting on, wow, that's a great roll. Look at that, guys. You're hitting on 3s, you're wounding on 3s, but of course balances out. And then you do 9. They just have, I think, a 5-up save in cover. So 5 ups, Nope, not enough. So they're going to lose 7 boys right off the bat. Crazy, right? Because we're wounding on 3s, we do that much damage. So they're going to lose 7 boys. Oh, boss! We's getting shot up! And now we just charge them in, right? So now the Hellions are going to just absolutely murder the rest of these boys here. We're going to come in and we're going to go for strength 6. We want to wound on 2s, right? And you know what? Just for the hell of it, we might use lethal hits, but I don't think we need it. So we're going to just actually not use lethal hits. Sometimes it's worth it to save the CP if you know you're just going to kill the unit anyway, right? So we're going to have sustained still. We're going to have strength 6 because of lance and all that stuff. So, cool. We're just going to get sustained hits. We're going to obviously get rid of the misses here. And we're going to be wounding on 2s. Strength 6 and lance. So, guys, they're dead. Okay? They're dead, right? They roll their 6-up saves. They don't make enough of them. Boys are gone. Boys are chopped up to bits. Boss, they's chopping us up. So then we take the objective. Now, some people might look at that and be like, well, Proxy Hammer, that's a really simplistic example. But how many times do you go against an opponent that on the first turn of the game, that's exactly what they do? They stage up a big, strong unit on their, home objective, or not home objective, their expansion objective, and they say, you know what? If you don't take this out, I'll score points. Hellions are the perfect answer to basically everything. We didn't lose any Hellions, by the way. I know that's not saying much against orcs, but, if we had Incubi going in, it might have been a different story. Let's just do an example of that, right? Let's say Incubi went in there instead, against 20 orc boys. Let's see if 10 Incubi with an Archon could get the job done. Probably not. Now, I know I did forget one thing, but I will say it's not going to really matter because Hellions have damage 2 weapons, but feel no pain, right? Oh, this Proxy Hammer, the squad is going to have a pain boy in it. You didn't do that right. Okay, yeah, but we overkilled the unit so badly that I don't think the pain token would have mattered. Okay, anyway. So, let's talk about the Incubi. So the Incubi get 30 attacks. Pretty respectable, honestly. Right? Pretty respectable. We're not getting any shooting, so they're going to have their full 20 models. Again, I'm just going to assume the pain ability that the pain boy has isn't going to really come into effect that much. I know they get a 5+ feel no pain, but let's be real here. Damage 2 weapons are going to probably do most of the heavy lifting here, right? They might save a couple of orcs. They might roll a couple of 5+, 5+ on 2 dice, but it's not likely. So we hit on 3s. Let's say that the Incubi have sustained hits, okay? Because they'll have sustained hits against infantry units in the Kabbalite cartel. So we're going to give them sustained hits on this one. And then we need 5s to wound, okay? Now this is the problem with Incubi. They don't get rerolls to wound. Even with the Archon, by the way, they don't get rerolls. Now we can reroll hits, but we can't reroll wounds. I don't know, how many did we miss there? Got 4 more. We only missed 3. Let's go ahead and reroll these 3 and see what happens. Okay, so we get a couple more hits. All right, we're assuming we're rerolling hits here because I want to give them the same benefit of the doubt. So we need 5s now, guys. 11. That's half the amount of wounds that we got with the Hellions. So not only are you not killing the orcs, but you're probably dead now because you didn't kill enough. So they still get, I believe in certain detachments, orcs still get like a invul save of a 6-up or something like that. So they take their 6-up invuls. I mean, I know that's a crazy amount of save. Let's just say they make 2, right? So instead of 11 dying, 9 die. They're going to attack back with 11 boys. 11 boys have 3 attacks apiece. That's going to be 33 attacks. And Pain Boy also, right? Oh, we need to do the Archon real quick. Let's do the Archon. Okay. Archon. 4 attacks. He's going to have the Husk Blade. 2's to hit. Cool. That's a sustained. Let's see what that does. Again, Archon needs 5s to wound. We're not getting any wounds here. 1. So 1 more boy dies. So we'll just take out 3 attacks. As good as the Archon is, the Husk Blade combo is not good into Orcs. It's just not good. And by the way, guys, I think Orcs are going to be, an actual faction again in competitive play. We haven't had to think of them for a while, but they're looking pretty good. Okay. Here we go. 30 attacks back with the Orcs. Rolling to hit. They need 3s. They need 3s to wound. So Choppas are AP -1, I believe. So they're going to be taking 13 armor saves at 4 up. Our Incubi, can they survive? No. Da-na-na. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. So basically what happened here is you charged a very expensive unit of Incubi into Orcs and did nothing, essentially. You had a net 0 gain. This is why I believe Hellions are much better, because Hellions can deal with everything, right? Of course, the Incubi are going to be able to go into something like Marines and kill them dead, right? They have the dev wounds and all that stuff. But, I mean, it really doesn't matter too much against other armies. That's just a Marine thing. If something has high armor and it's infantry and it's toughness 4, they're going to be very good against it. If it's not toughness 4, if it's toughness 5, has decent, stats, melee stats as well, you're not going to kill enough and they're going to kill you back. And by the way, Incubi are much less durable than Hellions. Hellions have 2 wounds apiece. Incubi have 1. So yeah, I think Hellions just all around are a superior unit. That doesn't mean that, Incubi aren't good. But even if I gave those Incubi lethal hits as well, I'm going in with lethal hits and I'm going in with sustained hits. And I have the Archon in there with the Husk Blade and everything. I have the whole package. And I know I didn't use the tokens or anything like that. But this was just a general example of Incubi do not do as much damage as Hellions into a wide array of targets. Even with all the buffs. They really struggle against toughness 5. They have no way of getting beyond that. Except if you're playing Sky Splinter and you have Lance. Right? If you're getting out of a transport with Lance and you got, other things. But then you don't have lethal hits, right? You don't have certain other benefits that you would in other detachments. So, I don't know, guys. What do you guys think? Hellions or Incubi? I personally think that the only place you really want Incubi in a big, massive squad of 10 is going to be in Kabbalite Cartel. And even then, I think Hellions might just be a little bit, better against certain targets, obviously. So, yeah, it's quite good. Now, one last thing I want to show you guys is the rapid ingress. You put them in reserve, right? So let's say we put them in reserve. Now your opponent can't really do much to attack you because you have a squad of 10 Hellions that can come in wherever you want to counterattack, right? Let's say your opponent's rushing you, right? It's turn 2, they rush up on all 3 objectives. They get control back of what you had in the midfield. Maybe you had some mandrakes there or something like that. They gain control over that. And then, your second turn comes around, or sorry, you went first. So your second turn, you get to rapid ingress, you have deep strike. Well, guess what? You can just deep strike them, or you could rapid ingress the next turn too. That's always a possibility. So you could rapid ingress in, and then when their turn's over, you can come in. Or you could act as a heroic intervention unit, right? So you could go right here. If you know your opponent's going to assault one of your other units, let's say you have I know this is blasphemy right here, but let's say you have a squad of Incubi posted up here, right? Or you have a Venom right here. That's probably what's going to happen. You have like a Venom or something. And your opponent really wants to kill the Venom so you don't have as much of an opportunity to assault them next turn. Well, you put some Hellions right here, right? You squeeze them right in here next to the Venom, And now your opponent has to kill the Hellions as well as the Venom to be able to deal with this threat. And they're probably not going to be able to do it because the Hellions are more durable, and you can just heroic intervention into whatever unit that is, and you can wipe them out. And that's it. Problem solved. Whatever your opponent does, you have a counter for it. If you see them moving in a certain direction, Hellions. Oh, I'm moving my, Dreadnought, my not Ballistus, my Redemptor Dreadnought up so that I could, destroy your squad of, your Raider, right? Maybe you have a Raider on an objective, so I can destroy your Raider. Hellions. Oh, I'm going to move this up. I'm going to move some Assault Marines up so I could, threaten your objective here. I'm going to kill whatever's here. I'm going to 6-inch consolidate into your objective. Hellions. Just Hellions, guys. Just throw Hellions at it. Because Hellions are going to be able to deal with almost any unit in the game. Almost any unit that's going to be... Obviously, there's some units that Hellions can't deal with. Let's be real, right? Anything that's going to be toughness 12 or above, Hellions are just probably not doing much to it. But, I mean, honestly, with lethal hits, they could probably still do something. I'm sitting here saying that, but then I'm like thinking, lethal hits, with Lance. So yeah, this unit can do so much, guys. So much. It's kind of insane. And I think the other thing we have to kind of recognize as well is that Hellions look cool, right? They're a cool looking unit, which makes them fun to play on the battlefield. Because if you have something really cool looking, you put it on the battlefield, it's also awesome. So yeah, I really like Hellions. I think they're really cool units. I used to have a squad of 10 way back in the day, in 5th edition. I used to run a webway portal list. I used to run a squad of 10 Hellions out of that webway portal. And guys, it did so much for me back then. And I feel like Hellions are back. They're back. They're the same as they were back then. Obviously, they were a little bit more fragile back then. But, oh man, they're good. They are good. All right, guys, that is going to be it for our tabletop simulator example. Again, just showing you some of the ways you can use Hellions. Use them as a rapid ingress threat. Use them as something that can clear your expansion. Use them as something that can attack the enemy expansion. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, they can do it. And they can even kill tough things. As long as it doesn't have -1 damage. Like a Redemptor Dreadnought, actually, the example I gave before, is probably one of the things they're not so good against. But even so, they can definitely stop a Redemptor from just sweeping through your entire army, right? And you have Dark Lances, I'm sure, at the ready as well, with Scourges and all that. So, yeah, Hellions, awesome unit. All right, guys, that is going to be it for our tabletop simulator example, and I'll be back with you guys on the video in just a second. All right, we're back. So, in conclusion, Hellions are absolutely brutal now, especially in Spectacle of Spite, where you're potentially getting sustained and lethals on top of the combat drugs and empowered bonus. They really go nuts in Spectacle of Spite. 95 points, a little bit pricey, right? But they're really good into a lot of different profiles, and they do have the speed and maneuverability to get around some of their weaknesses, which is they're mounted units, so they can't go through walls, but because they're so fast, it almost doesn't matter in certain cases. And here's the extra bonus. They don't need a transport, right? So Incubi, Witches, these other combat units, they need transports. Hellions do not, so you save points on that. And just to give you some context, a squad of Incubi, for example, to be fully functional and be really good, needs a transport of some kind, so either Raider or Venom. Most likely a Venom, if we're staying on the same points level, right? So for every 10 Hellions, it's going to be basically a squad of Incubi, but only 5 of them, a character, Archon probably, and the Venom itself, right? So there's even saying that's a little bit more expensive than 10 Hellions. And 10 Hellions does way more damage. Way more damage. Dev Wounds is good. So I think against your average Marine, Incubi are going to perform a little bit better. But I mean, AP-1 is good enough to chop through most things, especially with the weight of dice that Hellions have. Again, I think this is one of the premier combat units in the entire Codex. And in Spectacle of Spite, it's definitely the best. I do think that in certain detachments, you're still going to want Incubi, right? Incubi are good. You know, if you're running Kabalite Cartel, Incubi all the way. Because they have all the, synergies and stratagems and stuff like that they can benefit from. But if it's any other detachment, I would argue that Hellions are actually, they may be a better choice because they can just overall do more damage. All right, guys, that is going to be it for today's video. Thanks for watching. And I do want to thank all my patrons and supporters for supporting the channel. I know it's been a while. It's almost been a week since our last video, but I've been super busy and I've been trying to get everything together. I've really been trying to put a lot of time into the Druhkari, trying to learn them, trying to, kind of play them and test them out and stuff like that for you guys. And I have to say, the Codex is brilliant, okay? I've played, and I can tell these things. I'm not trying to brag or anything. I can tell when a Codex is well designed and when it's not, because I've played the game for so long. I know what it feels like to play a Codex that is poorly designed. I know what it feels like to play, a Codex that is well designed. I know the difference. So that's not a brag or anything. That's just because I've played so much damn Warhammer that I know by now. And this Codex is well designed. The detachments are well balanced and well designed. You look at something like Spectacle of Spite and you're like, oh my God, this has the potential to be super broken. And then you play it and you realize, actually, this is really balanced and tactical because in Spectacle of Spite, I don't have the CP that I do in other detachments. And I don't necessarily have the pain token economy. Like, I have to be very careful and very precise with how I use my abilities. But if you use them well, you will be rewarded greatly. It's like, with great power comes great reward. That's what I say. I know, Peter Parker's uncle said something different, but fuck him. We're playing Druhkari now, dude. We're the Green Goblins now. So with great power comes great reward. That's what I say. All right, guys. So other than that, other than giving thanks to my patrons and supporters, if you want to join the Discord, all you have to do is sign up for a Patreon free trial. It's free. You get to join the Discord. Plenty of guys on there that love talking about strategy, tactics, and hobbying, both Dark Eldar and Eldar. So I'll leave the link for the Patreon in the description. Also, if you guys want to support the channel via my channel store page or Amazon affiliate links, I will leave those in the description as well. The channel store page has a lot of, Eldar and Dark Eldar inspired apparel on there. It's mostly Eldari stuff, I'll be honest, but there are some Dark Eldar stuff on there as well. And of course, there'll probably be more Dark Eldar stuff in the next month or so. So anyway. All right, guys, that is going to be it for today's video. Thanks again for watching. Leave a comment if you guys liked the video or, have any comments about it. I think I fixed the volume issue. I think it was a problem with the settings on my microphone. In the back, I didn't see it, but there was a volume thing, a volume knob. I have turned that knob up. Hopefully that fixes it. Let me know if it doesn't, though. And, as long as you're just giving me honesty, we'll be good. To be perfectly frank, sometimes I thought you guys were bullshitting me a little bit for a while because I was like, man, there's no way. I bought this new microphone. I spent over $200 on it here. And, which was a nice gift from somebody. And honestly, I don't know what's going on. So hopefully it's better now. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one, everybody. Peace out.